All right, everybody, welcome to another podcast Mastermind Success Seminar. Today, I am very glad to be joined by fellow podcast Mastermind member from the UK, Tott. Darryl, how's it going, my friend?
I am fantastic, Cliff, and you?
I have never been better. It gets better every single day. And today, I know that you're going to be sharing with us all kinds of things that I should add to my to-do list. So I'm ready to be loaded up, my friend, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up our webinar slides right now. So with that being said, we've got the opening screen. I'm going to let you kind of take control. Unless you need me to say anything, I'll stand by and let you take the wheel.
No, what I'm going to do is take the first couple of minutes to play a little bit of a game. Now, this will make a lot more sense as we go through the slide presentation. So what I'd like everybody to do is grab a pen and paper, and when you've done that, if you could just pop it into the chat box that you have got a pen and paper, just so that we can see.
All right, Steve's got it. John has it. Danielle has pen. Okay, so we've got at least 4 folks who have got their pen and paper standing by waiting for your further instructions.
Fantastic. So what we're going to do first, and this might seem a completely randomized thing to do, I would like everyone to write down the first school that they went to. Now, this might seem very strange.
Does it matter if it's preschool or...
No, just the first, whatever your most memorable first school is that you went to.
All right.
And then what I'd like everyone to do then is, if you've had a pet, write down your favorite pet, and if you haven't had a pet, write down your favorite cartoon character. Now, they're the 2 things that I'd like everyone to do. Now, what I'll do is I'll come back to this in a few minutes' time, and it will all become very relevant, and you'll understand the process of why I've gone through this. Now, what I'd usually do in a presentation where everyone's standing in front of me is I'd play a game of Simon Says, where I'd usually get people to interact with me and we'd play a game. Now, the reason why I've just got you to do this is you have done something because I have asked you to do it. There is absolutely no other reason why you've done that. At this moment in time, you are engaged with me as the presenter of this presentation. Now, the reason why this becomes so relevant, especially when you're having, I'm doing a presentation and standing up. Say if I was presenting at a large conference, I'd get everyone to stand up, sit down, and play a game. There's no other reason that you're most engaged at this point. So to get to this stage where you are trusting me to propose questions to you to then write down an answer is because I've established trust through the podcast Mastermind or through my other efforts of talking to you. Cliff has kindly invited me on, which again has also reinforced that trust factor. And then thirdly, because we've established this trust factor, and now you're sat here on a call with me and you're the most engaged, you have just done something which I've asked you to do. There's no other reason to do it. Now, this is the exact same methodology and principle behind the thank you page. At no point should it be considered the last interaction with your potential customer, client, fan, whatever you're trying to build your list for. It is actually, fundamentally, in my opinion, the most important time, because at that point, you've got over all the obstacles and hurdles for someone to give away a piece of personal information, regardless of whether it's an email address or their name or any of the data that you're trying to capture. But now you've got them at the most engaged point, and they will do anything you ask them to do. So with that, Cliff, if you could go on to the next slide. Why your website does not stand a chance. Again, if you go on to the next slide, Cliff, this is kind of a bit of interaction and Q&A. So how many registered domains worldwide do people believe that there are at the moment? If you just type in some random thoughts, and Cliff, if you could read them out for me, we'll see how well people do.
All right, so 2 billion says Steve Cloyda. Few millions, says Danielle. 50 billion, says Albert Athazi.
Okay, so if you click, Cliff, it will bring up a little graph. This is from VeriSign, and one more click, Cliff. It's 252 million registered domains worldwide.
Wow.
To give people some understanding of this, when Bill Clinton first went into office in the US, there were 50 registered domains hosted in the USA. By the time he left office, there were nearly 30 million.
Nice.
That is the growth of how many domains there are. So if we go on to the next slide, Cliff, how many index pages does Google have? It's roughly 45 billion as of the 7th of May this year.
45
That's
billion.
45 billion indexed pages. Now, there are more pages on the web, some of which are being de-indexed or banned or have duplicates, etc. So it's 45 billion fresh indexed unique content pages. That is a huge, huge number. If you go on to the next the next slide for me, Cliff. How many seconds, when someone types in a search query, do you think they spend on average before they click onto one of the results?
Oh, I know. That's only because I'm looking at the next slide. How many seconds do you guys think? Danielle says maximum 4. Anybody else want to wager? 2 seconds, says Albert. John Murphy says 5 seconds. Shall we give him the answer?
Yeah, it's 6.8. Google revealed that people spend on average 6.8 seconds on a search query. So the reason why I'm saying you don't have a chance is at some point when you set up a website, you won't have any traction. You have to start generating your own buzz and your own interest. And yes, you can go out to various places and write guest posts or say that you've got some great article, but the majority of the time, people will find you via Google for some content you put up, and podcasting is slightly different. They'll find you obviously via iTunes, but again, with iTunes and the numbers that are in there, when people type in a specific keyword phrase where you might pop up, you're going to pop up against hundreds of other competitors. So what I'm really going to here and going for here is that it is an extremely competitive environment. Yes, there is still room. Yes, people still come through and are found and create great businesses, but statistically, you are likely to fail. So what this leads me down to is when someone types in a search query, regardless of whether it's on iTunes or regardless of whether it's in Google, your page has to satisfy Google's algorithms or iTunes algorithms to be seen as the most relevant piece of content that will be displayed for that search query, or your content has to be so good that people are going to naturally share it to build that buzz and interest. So if you go on to the next slide, please, Cliff. Beauty is in the eye of the visitor. Now, Cliff, if you press the next button, how many seconds on average do people spend on a website before making a decision to stay, go to another page, or bounce? How many seconds do people think it is?
All right. So Danielle says women 2 seconds. John Murphy says 20 seconds. Steve Cloyda says 2 seconds. Jim Queso says 20 seconds.
Right. It's 4 seconds. In 4 seconds, you have to persuade someone to stay or leave. Now, of course, this varies between industries and it varies between the types of website. So an e-commerce website traditionally has a much higher and quicker bounce rate than, say, an informative site. And again, if you've already established trust with a visitor and they're a repeat visitor, they'll stay longer. But for a new, unique visitor across all of the web, it's roughly 4 seconds when they land on your page. So when I'm referring to beauty is in the eye of the visitor, it's beautification of content and site and trust indicators. So within those 4 seconds, you have to display visually to them that your site is good enough to keep their interest before leaving.
Nice.
Although I don't have this statistic written down on a slide, I'm going to put another statistic out there. What do you think the average exit rate, so I'm not talking about bounce rate, I'm talking exit rate, the amount of people who exit a website before transacting. Now, transacting can be a contact us page, it can be a sign up and opt in, or it could be a completion of an e-commerce transaction. What do you think the average number is of people that will exit on the first visit and never return?
60%?
Correct. It's roughly 61%. So out
Nice.
of all of your web traffic, people will usually come and leave 60% of the time. So bounce rate, in my opinion, is a bit of a vanity metric. Bounce rate is obviously the amount of people who come and leave from a single page.
Ah, okay.
Now, depending on the site, exit and bounce is slightly different. So bounce is the people who come to a page and leave, and exit is the amount of people who come, visit a few pages, and then leave in total. So bounce rate can often be lower, but I would go on exit rate is roughly 61%. So if you just go to the next slide, Cliff, we're going to talk around how most of you will browse the internet. So you'll enter a search query, regardless of whether we're in iTunes or if it's on Google. Your site will be ranked somehow, or your podcast will be ranked. People will then spend around 7 seconds or 6.8 to make a decision. They'll look at your title, they'll look at your description, they'll see if you've established trust, they'll click on your listing, they'll browse your website, they'll leave. Then statistically, they might type in another search query and they'll come back to your site, and the process repeats. And much like the interaction of marketing, where people say they need 7 exposures, people need multiple exposures to you before they're going to feel confident to transact and interact. Now, a lot of you might be questioning this because, splash pages recently have become popular, or feature boxes, and they are specifically designed to make people feel like they are going to receive something of value in order to hand over their information. So whilst these have temporarily, and I'll say temporarily, and I'll qualify this in a minute, whilst these have temporarily reduced the amount of interactions someone needs before they give over the information, unfortunately, you'll find that, pop-up boxes 2 years ago were really popular because they worked at the time, but people became sterile to them. The same with feature boxes. People became sterile, and now the popularity and trend is for splash pages. Unfortunately, by following these kind of trends, they're only temporary measures before people become akin to these type of splash pages and information, and they'll become resilient to giving over that information. The other reason why I say that is that because so many people do a terrible job with their thank you page and the follow-up process, that people will not return, or they'll unsubscribe, and we'll get into that later. So at the end of this transaction, on the bottom line, you've established that trust as an authority, and people have handed over that information to you, regardless of whether it's a contact form, or if you've got an e-commerce store they've transacted, or it's an opt-in, and you present them a thank you page. So if you can go on to the next slide, Cliff. So placing trust in a faceless one-way conversation. Now, how would I describe most people's websites? Most websites, especially if they're corporate, and I know some of the PMM members have this as well, and they're not one-man bands, that you don't have a personality on the site. And I know a lot of you will do because you have your own shows, but I'm going to use in general terms with all sites because this is applicable to all sites. So even if you have a picture of yourself, people don't know your tone of voice, they don't know your body language, they don't really know much about you. All they know is the information that's placed in front of them. The voice that you put over in your podcast, if they actually find you via your podcast, but if they find you a blog, they don't. So the way I would describe it is like going into a business networking or a social networking event with everyone wearing brown paper bags on their head. And in doing so, you can't see them, you can't establish their body language, and again, you can't see their badges of trust. So if they're a member of, say, an accreditation, you can't see that. Now think about how difficult that is if you're trying to do business with that individual, build a relationship it is, and you can't see any of that information. That is just what a website is about. It simply is a faceless one-way conversation, because on a podcast, people can't ask you questions immediately. This webinar we're doing is very different. People in a blog can ask you a question on your comments, but again, it's not an immediate transaction or conversation, and information written down can quite often be misconstrued because you can't understand the pacing, the tonality, or any of the body language and visual information that you'll receive from that conversation. And we've all seen it, regardless of whether it's on emails or if it's on a blog. Someone has written something that they have perceived to be absolutely fine, and it's been completely misinterpreted. Now think about that in your blog and your podcast. You might say something and you might put in a piece of humor on your podcast or some sarcasm. But again, if people don't know you and your personality, it's not going to come across well. So how do you get over this faceless one-way conversation? Cliff, if you go on to the next slide, I pulled out a couple of examples, and one is John Murphy, who I believe is on the call. John, in this instance, has done a great thing, and the reason why I picked this up as just one example is he's put his clients on there. So you can see that he works with big multinational brands like Johnson & Johnson and Vodafone, and immediately that instills a level of trust and confidence in his professionality. What he could do, and what he has done on the left-hand side, is put in a testimonial. So we'll get into the kind of most common trust factors. So again, this is just an example, and having a video is a really great way of people visually seeing you. Now, I know that many of you in the podcast mastermind have a podcast, but you don't have that video, so people can't pick up on those additional elements. So one takeaway I'd say from this is all go out there and put yourself in that level and that uncomfortable position to present something via video. Now, I know, having spoken to people like Steve Cloyder, who's on the call as well, he as well is more comfortable with the podcast medium and now his blogging intent as opposed to video. However, video is such a great medium to bring everything together. If you click onto the next slide for me, Cliff.
I just want to say immediately, just if you don't mind me interrupting you.
Yeah, of course.
I just created a video that I'm thinking about putting, right at the top right-hand side of my sidebar, just above my
top 4 reasons.
Yeah, right now I've decided not to put it in the sidebar because it's the most recent post, but once it gets buried down a little bit, that video is going to go in the top right-hand corner of my site. And you just convinced me to do something else. I'm adding this on my to-do list, but I'm going to add a list of my highest rated clients in iTunes. So basically my clients include, let's say, michaelhyatt.com, Social Media Examiners, Amy Porterfield, and all these others. And I can actually list, top 10 in iTunes or something like that.
Correct, Cliff, and you've just hit another point. Lewis Howes, it's just one example, it's just because I happened to be browsing his site yesterday, is he establishes trust in his feature box because on the bottom right-hand side it says, I have been featured in. Although it's written in the third person, it's Lewis has been featured in. But again, Cliff, I know that you've been mentioned in Social Media Examiner and all these other things, and these are great established trust places that you have been featured in. And again, I believe recently you've have further features that you discussed on both. Exactly. Do you want,
yeah. With again, I've been in Forbes. I've been in some other business journal, the big business journal, Yahoo News, and I've got a bunch of other things that are linked in my Wikipedia article, and all of those other big podcasts as well.
Again, all of those are trust indicators. So not only have you got clients like Michael Hyatt, but you've got all of those trust indicators like Forbes. So again, I'm not saying this is Cliff's grand master plan to take over the podcasting world, but if you wanted to see and become the guru for how to go through a process of podcasting for large multinational corporations to get away that faceless interface that we discussed to give them a more personal aspect, by establishing those trust indicators, if anybody from those marketing departments came along, immediately he's seen as an authority within the business space. So that's just another primary example of how to use these relevant trust indicators on site. So again, depending on the site that you have, and if you have a bespoke landing page on the front page or if you have a blog, depends whether you'll place these in a feature box, in a sidebar content, and where you put them. Now, I'm going to actually jump ahead of myself in the webinar here. One thing that people really fail to do is continue the establishment of trust on thank you pages of contact forms. Now, this is a particular gripe of mine as a conversion rate and optimization expert, is that if you're a business, and I'm putting this to people who are on the call who have a business who incorporate podcasts, you are trying to sell yourself as a consultant or a service. You have established all these trust indicators and someone comes to your thank you page and you paste a message. That message does nothing to re-establish that trust. Again, you have certain clients on your homepage, and again, you can't fit them all in. As we saw with John, I think he had 5 or 6. In fact, 3. He had 7. 6. He had 6 on his site. he probably has more clients than that, and he has some great testimonials. So why, when someone has given over that contact information, would you stop trying to reinforce that? Again, it's like the 7 principles of marketing. On the thank you page, put more testimonials, put a video testimonial, put more of your clients, because at the point that you later then ring up that individual to break down any misconceptions they have or try and sell them a product or service, you are re-engaging and reinforcing your positive message that you're an established professional. So I just want to put that out there so that everyone understands this. So again, Cliff, if you can go to the next slide, we'll go through just the 7 top trust indicators that you today can all put on your site. Governing bodies. I know some people on the call are businesses who incorporate podcasting. Let's say you're an accountant. Across the world, there's various accounting bodies for different geographic regions. But here in the UK, there's 3 main ones, which is ACA, ACCA, or CIMA. Again, simply by having that qualification and having the symbol of that institute, where you have gone in and taken professional exams and being seen as an authority and have a certain level of professionalism, that you can put that on your site. Again, that links back to the professional qualifications. So not only do you put the governing body where you're registered, but you put your qualifications in. A featured in message, as we've seen with Lewis House. Products and services. Now, I know this might seem a strange one to put in, but for someone like Cliff, where he has learned how to podcast, which again has got many people linking back to him, that is an established brand within Cliff's own brand. So he can go creator of learnhowtopodcast.com. So again, if you have a product or service which is really out there and very famous within your area, saying that you are the creator of that product or service will go a great and considerable distance to establish those trust indicators. Testimonials, they are fantastic. Video testimonials obviously work the best, and then working backwards, a text testimonial with a picture and then just a testimonial. So going back a couple of slides as an example, John on the left hand side had that testimonial, but if he had a picture of someone, it works probably 5-10-fold times better. And the reason being is that by seeing that individual, it adds personalization and a face and credibility to that testimonial. Text, unfortunately, people miss that. And in terms of eye tracking software, visual imagery draws in attention. So many people from Group 3 and some other people on this call will know that I recently went in and redid Steve Cloyder's The Prospecting Expert homepage lander. And we specifically put in there the images taken from LinkedIn of the individuals that provided the testimonial, because again, it adds in that credibility and personability that Steve actually worked with those individuals. Years established. Cliff has been around for many years, 7-8 years now, I believe. Cliff, is that correct?
Yep.
So again, years established. He's not a fly-by-night success. He's been doing it for a while. Now, the internet is an amazing, amazing place that people think, Cliff has had overnight success because he's featured in Forbes without realizing the 7 years of hard work and graft. And we all know by having these personal conversations that Cliff has got a great story. But as an immediate trust indicator, Cliff could say podcasting since 2005. Because many people didn't even know that podcasting existed until 2013, because they might have only just seen it as this new keyword now that Social Media Examiner have said it's the most important marketing tool in 2013. So whilst many people might consider it that it is just a newly established medium, it's actually been around since 2005, and that's a very credible thing to place on a website. And again, the last one is clients and brands that we've touched upon. What I'd like to do is quickly, I know we have a Q&A later, but does anybody want to ask me any questions? Or Cliff, have you got anything to ask me about what we've covered so far and these specific trust indicators?
Sure. Well, while we're waiting for folks to potentially put something into the chat room, if they have a question at this point, I have a question for you. I have the 1-hour video that is the story of how I went from hobby to full-time career. It's currently at the bottom of my About page, and tons of people comment on the fact that, man, the reason why I finally chose to contact you, I've been checking you out for weeks or if not months, but when I actually got and found this video that actually where you shared your story at Blog World one year, that's what hooked me. since it's a video, would that be a great thing to include? Something that I know is a major trust indicator that pushes people over the ledge of whether or not they're going to fully take things to the next level and hire me. Is that a good thing to put at the bottom of or someplace on a thank you page?
It is. We'll get to the element of a thank you page in a minute because obviously that's an upfront trust indicator. Now, what I would say, Cliff, is behind that, in fact, this is a really good story. There's a brand in the UK called The Sun, and people probably have seen Rupert Murdoch in the news. Now, when he came over and started to set up News Corp, he set up a newspaper called The Sun. Now, in setting up The Sun, he worked with editors, and when people used to come to him with stories, he used to have one requirement to run that story in the newspaper, is that whole entire story could be summarized in 20 words or less. If he couldn't convey his message in 20 words or less, that article would never run, and he was ruthless and actually kicked out reporters who couldn't come up with that embodiment of message in 20 words or less. So what I would say, Cliff, is that video is fantastic, but to get the hook to people to press that play button, you need to get across your message in 20 words or less. Now, online, there is one person who has been very, very good at this, and I actually commend him, is Andrew Warner from Mixergy. When he does his pre-qualification for interview, and you know this, Cliff, having interactions with him, he will actually spend time to craft a title with the entrepreneurs about, how, and again, this is just off the top of my head, how Cliff pursued a passion, placing his family at risk, and turned it into a business more profitable than he could ever imagine. That has summarized potentially an hour's worth of video in 20 words or less. And then again, you can say, press below to play my story.
Gotcha.
Or something along that line. Now, that's a really compelling message, and that will get people hooked to then watch the video. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
So what I would say,
before
we get into the questions, anybody in here who has a long video and thinks there's some real, or wants to convey their story, try and consolidate it in 20 words or less. And again, AIDA, which is attention, interest, desire, action. You can look at that marketing principle. That's a really good framework in how to try and propose those 20 words. So if we move on to the questions.
Yeah, the questions
immediately.
So here are the questions so far. John Murphy says he wants to know if you can once again clearly explain the difference between exit rate and bounce rate. He didn't fully understand.
Okay, so bounce rate is I type in podcasting equipment. I then go onto Cliff's page for podcasting equipment, and then I leave without doing anything else.
That's a bounce.
Bounce rate, yeah, that's a bounce. A bounce is an exit where someone has come to one single page and left immediately. That's bounce. Exit rate is where someone has come on, browsed several pages, and then left. In Google Analytics, you will be able to see the exit rate per page. Now, I won't go into it in this webinar, and again, I'm happy to do another video, but in terms of exit rate, you can establish a goal, and you can set up Google Analytics with either multiple goals or single goals, and you can see the total amount of visitors, how many unique and how many are new and returned, and basically do a very small bit of calculation on screen that will tell you the average exit rate before people establish a goal.
So basically, the idea of the exit rate, let me see if I understand this. The exit rate, every page is going to have an exit rate. Some of those are going to be bounces. But the exit rate kind of tells you how many people, actually this particular page was their last page before they left the site. Yes, correct. And we're not talking about the 61% of people will exit without ever doing anything again. Is that study that information came from was actually looking at a cross-representation of e-commerce plus Contact Us, and it was slightly, I had some questions around the credibility of that, because there were some sites that had, say, 10, 15 goals of download a form, fill in a contact form, go to this page, watch this video, and some that only had one single central goal. So again, it depends on your site. If you have a goal which is on John, he has a video, press play on my video, that's one goal. Another goal would be fill in my opt-in form on the right. Another one, he has a contact page as well, fill in the contact. He might have multiple goals. And we will get onto this kind of methodology of framework in a minute about establishing
what your goals are and then the user journey, but it's within your own site to establish your exit rate. But what I would say is a really good thing to do in Google Analytics is go to your content and then look at your content, and one of the columns will be exit rate. If you have a page which you think is great and it has a very high exit rate and a similarly high bounce rate, I can guarantee you that there are some problems with that page. So that's the difference between bounce and exit rate.
All right, so I hope that helps out, John. The next question, and then we'll move on, is from Danielle. She says, how do you get a good balance between these things that are about you and about what you can do for your client? She puts in quotes, pillow talk.
That's a very good question.
All right.
So just repeat the question again, Cliff.
All right. So how do you balance between, basically your credibility and stuff like that, the things that people say about you and the things that make you look good versus how much you can do for your client? You're communicating what you can do for your client.
So what people have to consider is that each individual page, and in fact, this is a really good thing to start with now. One thing that I've given to Steve as an indication is take your site and look at your menu bar and get some post-it notes and write down basically your site structure, and then write down your products and services and offering, and you'll find that those fall into buckets. Now within those buckets, say you have a podcast and you have services and you have digital products. Let's use Cliff as an example. The people that I know he doesn't do one-on-one consulting, so I'm going to use 6 months ago, but on the one-on-one consulting page, it would be preferential for him to have his client list. So Michael Hyatt as an example. On his products and services page, it would be better to have my products and services have been featured in, and then learn how to podcast, social media examiner, etc. On the contact page, it would be testimonials. So what you can do is look at your current audience and the types of reception that you're getting, and break down the trust indicators to the most relevant pages. What I would say on your homepage is pick maybe 2 of those trust indicators based on your ideal client or your ideal sale, and place those as the most important. And again, testimonials are a great one because you can rotate them, and again, it establishes trust. But again, if you're only starting a business and you have 2 testimonials and not that credible, but you have sold or had your product featured in, you go with featured. It's all about perception. So again, if you have only just started your business and you've only just sold your first online product and you've only sold it to Joe Blogs, but your product has suddenly been featured in something like Social Media Examiner, then put on featured in Social Media Examiner as opposed to sold 10,000 copies. Again, another one of these establishment brands is how many of these products you've sold.
And I also want to just say that oftentimes your trust indicators that you're putting on there are not only a way of saying what people have said about you and stuff like that, but they're also communicating what products and services you do have. So for example, a testimonial that is saying, hey, thank you so much for the podcasting A to Z course. I knew nothing about this, but now I'm podcasting. I would have never been able to have done this without your 4-week course. That's a testimonial. It's a trust indicator. It's somebody else that's saying what they've accomplished based upon my help. And at the same time, it's communicating a product or service that I also offer.
One thing Cliff actually just hit on there, I think he didn't realize it, is testimonials are really good, and you have to be very objective about your testimonials that you place on site. So let's say we had 2 testimonials, one from Michael Hyatt and one from Joe Blogs up the road. If Michael Hyatt says, Cliff's products are great, it's really delivered well, you should go listen to Cliff. Now, whilst he might be a great person, I necessarily wouldn't actually put that on my website, because if I had Joe Blogs up the road saying, I had such a pain point. My pain point was that I could not get high quality audio and I had this horrible hiss, and Cliff's course within 5 minutes completely resolved my issues, and now I'm a much more credible podcast. That is a much stronger testimonial because it's an exact pain point that a future client might have, and it has resolved it within a certain amount of time. And again, there's actually no harm if you're trying to get testimonials in sending out a framework saying, hi guys, I'd really appreciate you giving me some testimonials. I would really love it if you could tell me what the pain point was, how it resolved it, and in what time. that's actually a really good way of getting testimonials, is you give people a framework for all the testimonial that you're looking for. So
Excellent.
hopefully that kind of gives a bit more information behind testimonials. Don't necessarily go for the most trusted in your space. Go for the one that really solves the pain point, that will actually get over that objection that someone might have in future.
Very good.
Cool. So we're going to get on to the next slide, which is how to turn potential raving fans into one visit wonders. So you have the potential on your site to turn someone into a lifelong fan. However, most people will fall into one of three unfortunate contact us messages, and that is, thank you for contacting us. Thank you for contacting us. A member of staff will contact you shortly. Or thank you for registering for my free download. Please go to your inbox and blah, 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 blah. Now, there is one huge problem with this. And Cliff, if you go to it, hang on, before you press the next button, does anyone know what this is? What is the problem with these three messages?
These people are immediately 100% engaged with you, and you've pretty much given them nothing. It's just basically saying, stand by and I might respond to you, or something might happen. You haven't given them a call to action.
No call to action, and you've asked them to leave.
Yeah.
You've said, thank you, you've done what I want you to do, now go away. So if you go to the next slide, Cliff, you'll see a massive big red cross if you press the next button, and it basically says, if you press it again, please leave my site. That's what you're saying. You're saying, thank you very much, I'm now going to ring you up and have an uphill battle to allow me to sell to you. Or, thank you very much, I've got your email, now I'm going to send you an email once a month or spam you. And now Cliff goes some way to say, I will never send you out, anything else. I will just basically email you with relevant news or new products. But some people then, have their blogs aggregated into RSS feeds that then go into their email list. What you should really do is say to people, here's what I want you to do, here's how I want you to do it, and move on. And again, this comes into the 10 ways that you can make your visitors do what you want them to do. So if you go to the next slide, Cliff, before you press the next button, Cliff or anyone else, can you think of ways that you can actually utilize your thank you page, depending if you're a podcast, a product, or a service?
Well, you could immediately, if you wanted to, you could have the client fill out a form that tells a little bit about themselves. You could send people to your iTunes page and have them subscribe to your podcast. You could request a rating and review, but I would say probably more send them to a page that's going to give them some great content. So for example, right now, my thank you page for my opt-in form is thank you for signing up. This is the kind of information I'll be sending to you and how often I'll be sending it. Would you like to also sign up for the gspn.tv mailing list, which surprisingly almost everybody does because they're fully engaged and they'll do what you ask them to at that point.
Because you asked.
But what I should be doing, what I know that I should be doing is, instead of saying all of that, I should just say thank you for signing up for my podcast mailing list. If you haven't done so already, I encourage you to check out the most valuable tutorial I've ever created. It's 100% free. Go to learnhowtopodcast.com. Click here.
Yeah. If you press the next button, Cliff, this kind of hits on some of the points you've talked about. So one, you could survey them. Cliff said this. Again, Aweber and the other MailChimp type devices are not so great, but if you have a split form from Infusionsoft to Office Autopilot, we'll get onto surveys in a second. Actually, what I'm talking about is slightly different. But a survey, you could say, have you enjoyed my site? What products or services do you want me to create? Or, did you find my site easy to interact? Tell us more about yourself. This is the one I was saying with Office Autopilot and Infusionsoft. Once they've submitted the form, they're tagged. So you can actually say to them, hey, tell me who your favorite football team is, or tell me something I didn't know about yourself. The reason is that if you ever then have a CRM like HighRise, or you go to contact them, or within Infusionsoft, you then have that exact piece of nugget of information that when you ring them, you can avoid talking about your business, product, or service. You can talk to them openly, establish that trust, friendly. If they say that in the UK they love soccer and they love Manchester United, go and check the scores. So if you're going to ring them or have a conversation via email, you can say, hey, did you see the game last night? It's a shame that Man U lost, even though they're now league champions. Ask for feedback on specific issues. Again, be very specific. Unlike a survey, this is one single question. Add links to your top content. Re-engage them. Say, hey, really thank you for downloading this page. Here is further information that is relevant to the download that you've just received. Add links to your display testimonials. Again, establish that trust factor. Show a video with a call to action. Say, hey, a personal message, really thank you for downloading it, here's what I need you to do next. Display a promotion or upsell, great opportunity for an e-commerce site. Ask for social follows and shares. Again, ask for them to, hey, I really appreciate the time you're taking to download this or engage with me. I'd really appreciate it if you found it valuable content, to go and share it on Facebook. Like, again, maximum 2 call to actions. Ask for, recommend a friend. Say, hey, put in their email address here and you can get another download, or you can, get some money off your next order, or present a scarcity offer. Again, scarcity offers I don't particularly like, saying, hey, you've just signed up. If you buy in the next 10 seconds, you'll get, £50 million off my product, which is overpriced anyway. Again, scarcity offers work in certain scenarios, but again, it's not the main call to action. One thing I would say is, I'm running a test at the moment with a client, is when you say, hey, fill in this form to download my PDF or my ebook, what I'd really encourage everyone to do is actually create a secondary product, which is a bonus. So that when someone comes to the thank you page, not only do you allow them to immediately download that PDF, but you say, hey, here is your immediate PDF. However, in order to receive the further information, you need to go to your inbox and press the link to double opt-in, and you'll get a special bonus for doing so. Instead of what most people do in the blogosphere, which is say, hey, thank you very much, you have to go to inbox and double opt-in, and then we'll take you to the thank you page. Change the reverse logic. Give them something extra they weren't expecting. Say, here's your immediate download, but when you go and confirm, I'll give you a special additional bonus, which can really help you.
Very nice.
So, if you go to the next slide, it's the thank you reality. So the thank you reality is that people are engaged and you can do them to do whatever you want. But again, you need to put as few obstacles and hurdles in their way. Human beings, unfortunately, are easily distracted. They will immediately switch off. So you have to remove all the distractions. So if you go to the next slide, Cliff, here is a classic example of a structure of how people's thank you pages are. They basically used the same layout they've used for their blog, and Cliff, I believe you do this exact same thing, which is you have your logo on your top left, your menu bar, then you have the right-hand bar, which has still got the opt-in in, and then you've got your top articles and comments and affiliate ads and product ads and a footer. Unfortunately, that takes away the value that you're providing to the person in the thank you page and adds in the possibility for them to just leave. So if you go to the next slide, Cliff, I'm just going to show you that these are the problems. Take away any distraction that can remove them from the primary objective, which is to download your product and double opt-in or fill in your survey, or one of the things that we spoke about before. So what I've done is I've created a template or an overview of the perfect landing page for a podcast. And this is it. Logo in the top left-hand side, a video or a text-based thank you, which reinforces the product offering you've given them, and say, do this. Download my report now. Then go to iTunes or press here to subscribe to iTunes. Then 3, go to your inbox and double opt-in and receive a special offer, a special additional bonus from me. It's really simple as that. Remove all distractions and make it a full width template. You don't want people to start clicking on affiliate ads and leaving your site. It's not what you want them to do. You want to keep them engaged. And because you've got over those trust hurdles, you at this point have the ability to present them anything, and ask them to do anything, and they will do it. So if you go to the next slide, Cliff, this is the reinforcement of the thank you methodology. And if you go to the next slide, this is what you should be doing. You should define your business objective goals for your thank you page. Now, I think what a lot of people do is go, right, I need an opt-in because I need email addresses, and that's as far as their thought logic goes. They go, now I've got their email address, I can broadcast out to them and send them, my new products and services. You really need to define what you want from your thank you page. So now you've got that person engaged and they've established that trust factor. What do you want them to do? What is the most fundamental and crucial thing to your business? And again, depending on where you are in business will depend on the outcome and will depend on the type of thank you page you have. So if you already have a product or service and you're thinking about what should I do next, do a survey. If you're just starting, then you want the social engagement. You want people to like and share it. So really establish what you want them to do with that thank you page. Define your thank you page test. So define the goal Once that's defined, define the test. So you have your control, which is what you have at the moment, then you define the test. Establish control figures. Go into Google Analytics, and again, I'll provide this in a latter video which will support this webinar, is establish control figures. Go to that page and have a look. What's the exit rate? What's the bounce rate? Have you got any goal tracking on site? If not, let's put it on. I'll show you the click track and the click submit event tracking that you can do. Implementing your test. Again, Google Content Experiments is a free split testing tool. Implement your test if you want to do it, or just go with a brand new page. Test variations to find the highest converting offer or opt-in rate or survey completion, and retest and remeasure. Nothing is perfect. So although you might on your first test get 50% higher engagement, why not go for 75% or even 100% further engagement? Again, you can do a test between your business objectives and goals, and you can even split test your audience. So say if you wanted 50% to continue to like and share and 50% to do a survey, that's all possible with Google Content Experiments, which is free within Google Analytics. So what I want to do is now look at some examples. So the first one we're going to look at is a service offer. So mainstream cleaning. This is a lady who is within a local group here in the UK. And we did this as a test to prove a concept. She found that a lot of people were finding her naturally and organically through the website. Now, what people were doing is going to her website, filling in the contact form. And again, here's a classic example. Testimony on the right, which is a good thing. But she put, "Thank you for your interest with us. You should receive a response shortly." So what I did is, if you go to the next one, Cliff, is I said, right, let's put in a big, different colored call to action. Call this number in the next 10 minutes for 15% off first month. So for her, it's all about the regular cleaning contracts. Again, we ran this test, and she actually doesn't do this anymore because of the success of this, but we had roughly 42% of all people who hit that page ring up. Now, for a business, this is fundamentally amazing, because as opposed to someone filling in the form, then her sales team or her having to ring them up, and then re-establishing that trust factor, because there might be a time delay between the time someone contacts them to the time they ring up, and having that uphill struggle to overcome these objections to win the contract. The people are ringing her. She's already got the trust indicator. She's re-established it on the right-hand side with customers, what our customers say. And then people are ringing her. They're ringing her in her territory, in her domain. It's for her to refuse the business, not to try and win it. It's a completely different mentality for a business to have. That's just one example of a service-based offer. A social follower opt-in. Again, this is very similar. We're going to use Steve Cloyder in this example. So recently I've been working with Steve, and on the left is his old page. It was, "Thank you, here's your download, please go and opt in." And again, that's no problem because that's the establishment. But you can see that on the right-hand side, there's still the sidebar. What we did is we put in a big thank you video that Steve created, and we said, "Hey, go and subscribe to iTunes and then download or register for our next webinar." In fact, this is slightly old. We changed the thank you messaging from what he currently has. But this is a primary example, and you can see the noise on the left-hand side to the simplicity on the right-hand side. And again, Steve having a video allows people to see him, his body language, how he talks, how he holds himself, and to really establish that trust as an expert. Again, putting that personal signature and information and image in just re-establishes it.
Very nice.
The next example is a product-based offering. So, Cliff, if you go to the next one, I'm just going to show you this. I had a engagement party that I attended. It wasn't mine. It was my fiance's sister's party, and we lost a piece of cutlery, and we needed to replace it. So here's just proof. I actually went and purchased from an Ida that you guys know. They're called Winers in the UK. If you go to the next slide, Cliff, this is their thank you page. It says, "Thank you for your order. You will receive an order confirmation email with details of your order and a link to track its progress. Continue shopping." At this point, they're an e-commerce site. An e-commerce site, on average, has between 1% and 2% conversion rate. So they've gone through all these obstacles and hurdles. At this point, they could have asked me to do anything. So what I did is, if you go to the next slide, Cliff, I just mocked up some examples of what you can actually ask them to do. On the left-hand side is save 25% on your next order, recommend a friend up to 5 friends. And again, this can be automated. So to ignore useless data is that only once one of their friends clicks on a link in an email will you then present the 25% off to them. But again, they can add up to 5. On the right-hand side, it says win big, take your customer survey and win up to £100 worth of products. Again, a big survey. And in the middle, there's a social share. Now, while I wouldn't necessarily say that having all three call to actions is a good idea, I just wanted to show this as a proof of concept for what can be achieved. So now you've seen a service-based offer business, a social proof that you could use again for podcasting. So we had with Steve sign up to the podcast, and now a product-based business. So you can see the mentality behind this. So what I'm going to do now is ask Cliff to bring up his browser, and we're going to do a live review with one or two people on the call who would like me to go through the end-to-end trust establishment immediately to opt-in, to contact, and then the thank you page. So do we have any volunteers?
I'll start off with mine.
Okay, let's go with it.
And then if there are other folks out there, feel free to just put your link in the website or in the chat box, and we'll do yours next. All right, so mine is going to be podcastanswerman.com, and we're pulling it up now. And then over here on the right-hand side, and by the way, see how I have Podcasting A to Z right here? This video is in essence a whole cell for Podcasting A to Z. So I'm actually gonna shorten this down to 300 pixels and move it over here to the top right, and it's gonna have that picture of me and very good information. But you want me to go ahead and sign up for my mailing list, right?
1 second, Cliff. If you just scroll up to the top, and I just want to make people aware of this, is some of you at the moment may have a site that is supported by affiliate links. So you put them higher up on your right-hand side. You know that people spend roughly 4 seconds on your page to establish trust or seize things. You've probably heard of above the fold and below the fold. Above the fold is things that are immediately obvious when you land a page, and below the fold is things you have to scroll for. It's important these trust indicators A are above the fold, and your own personal opt-in is above the fold. So a takeaway for all of you is take your website and go to the standard sizes of browsers, and there's a few plugins that you can modify the browser sizes around, and look and see if your trust indicators are above or below the fold. So one thing I'd say to Cliff is he's already picked it up. The clients that he's worked with, the amount of time established could be in his big graphic at the top. There's a few other trust indicators that Cliff could establish immediately. Now, Cliff, if you fill in your mailing list on the right-hand side.
All right, so we'll go in here and put Bob Vila at, we will put feedback at gspn.tv and click sign up. All right.
So Cliff has fallen into the classic trap of A, having a right-hand sidebar.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
And B, when he's got a big gspn.tv TV sign. Now, I'm going to challenge your exceptions here, Cliff, is people who know you may not know that you have, people who've just found you may not know that you have gspn.tv or that Podcast Answer Man falls under gspn.tv. I know you have the intro at the beginning of your various podcasts.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is immediately saying, you've been successfully added to the list. If you're interested in following my journey as I lead an online community built around my own network of podcasts, you can consider my journey below. It might be a better idea to say Podcast Answer Man is part of the GSP community, a network of podcasts, and then say the community has over X amount of members. And again, that just gives some credibility to the network and the podcasts. Because unfortunately, within the podcasting space, people who have multiple podcasts quite often set it up as a network or a branch name, and they actually might not have any traction or credibility. So by being able to put those trust indicators in there, Cliff, you will actually give that further credibility.
Okay. And definitely I will be making some changes to my calls to action, and I will get rid of that sidebar for sure. All right, so we're looking at here's subscribe to the Construction Industry Podcast by email. It's free, so that's one thing. Is that the same as his mailing list? It looks like that's the big one. So let's go ahead and
so before you put in, Cliff, just to think about trust indicators there. Apart from saying it's for free, what are people going to get from the podcast? What is the main pain point, and why is this podcast established? What is subscribing to the podcast going to help within the construction community? A better call to action would be, I don't know the construction industry.
He has a great indicator, something like learn from other experts in the industry of construction, or valuable insights, interviews with experts in the construction industry. So he could actually do something to kind of talk up the value proposition of actually subscribing, is what you're saying.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's correct. And as well as that, putting in if it's how many people have been interviewed, who he's interviewed, and again, if Roman Tech has been established for a certain amount of years, just the few trust indicators around the podcast and why people should subscribe to the podcast.
Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and subscribe. And there we go. And now we've got...
Okay, this is one of the mistakes which I wanted to pick up as a next point in the podcast, in the Q&A, which is a classic mistake is to have MailChimp or Aweber and actually not create a bespoke thank you page. This is the generic one that's provided by MailChimp, and I would say avoid things like this like the plague. You have taken them away from your website. I know it's opened in a different browser, but it's immediately taken away from the website, and it kind of devalues, in my opinion, the whole user experience and journey. So I'd say that one of the first things to do is actually go and create a bespoke thank you page. One other thing I'd like to say is, Cliff, if you just go back onto Roman Tech and fill in your details again, I've got this odd feeling that it's going to come with a "you're already subscribed" with no other bits of information. Okay, this is slightly different, but Aweber is the absolute worst for this. When you have an Aweber account, if you leave it set up as standard, what happens when someone goes to put in the email address again is it comes to this tiny little box saying "you're already subscribed" with a big warning triangle that basically is a big kind of "stop there, you're doing something wrong." And I think that's awful. The two pages, apart from the thank you page, is if you're trying to get people to subscribe, is set up a secondary page that says, "Thank you, you're already subscribed, here's your downloads again." So you're going to test it on your... I think your page goes to the same, just to the same GSPN page, Cliff.
Actually, I'm going to check something because e-address...
There you go, email address is not valid. Well, it's similar, but you see that message there? It says, "You're already subscribed." That's the same box.
How does it know? Hold on. Let's see here. Bob Angel. I'm just making up an email address here. And so at gspn.tv. All right. And why does it say email address is not valid?
Try refreshing your page, Cliff, before you put in your email
Yeah, let's do that. Again. So I'm going to go in here and do... Because I want to see it, because I know that it let feedback at GSPN. It gave you the thank you page because I have it set up to where if the email address entered has already been added, is already on the mailing list, then send them to the thank you page. But I wonder what happens here. Let's just put Diane Keaton, and I will put Diane at gspn.tv. I want to see what happens here because So basically, you know what I may have done it. I wonder if I actually turned off double authentication. Let me go into my feedback. It would be in social. Nope. So it's there. Let's see here. That's somebody else that did sign up. Huh? I don't know where those emails would have gone. Or actually. I don't know. It almost seems as those people just automatically would get listed. I have to go through my process and find out what's going on. But anyway, I see what you're saying. You don't want to actually use the standard stuff. You want even like, for example, I would want it to where if somebody types in their mailing list and we do have double authentication, well, instead of giving a Aweber or MailChimp, "Hey, you're almost finished," I would want them to come to my website and have an almost finished page on my website. And that's where you said you could actually reestablish more, of your trust indicators. But you can also say, "Hey, you're almost finished." And if, as an additional bonus, if you go to your email inbox and hit confirm now, you'll also receive this additional thing.
Correct. So, what I'd say is the perfect kind of journey, in my opinion, is they sign in, they get to a page where they can immediately download what you've given away. They then said, "We really appreciate you, taking the time to download it. And if you go to your email inbox now and simply press on the link that's provided, you'll get a special bonus that we didn't advertise." So you're giving away immediately value. You're reestablishing the trust. They're seeing your personality on video, and then they are going and doing the call to action. And then remember, you actually have two sets of call to action. So you have the one where they immediately see the thank you page, and then the one that they see once they've clicked on the subscribe form.
Right.
But as I said, my third sin is when someone has already been on a list and then they fill it in again, and it takes them to this horrible Aweber warning page that they're already subscribed.
Yeah.
You know, just make sure you go into Aweber and send it back to the first or second opt-in, or go back and say, hey, we really thank you very much for trying to re-engage again, but you're already on our list. Either go to your email inbox or download, the information again, or simply we've re-provided it for you below.
Right.
And again, it's just a little thank you and personal message, but you actually said they've come and done it again because they've lost it or they can't find it. So just saying, hey, we really appreciate you signing up again, but you already subscribed. Here it is. So that's what I would say.
All right, here we are on John Murphy's site. We got the Stressed Out Executive Guide to Achieving Your Goals. Get my executive goal setting video with daily and weekly templates free. Just leave your name and email address below.
John, what I'd say is you're saying get my executive setting goals and stress executive guide to achieving goals. It doesn't say learn how, again, this isn't very good because I haven't had time to work out the exact phrasing of it, but it would be learn how to achieve your goals whilst being less stressed.
Yes.
The executive guide, blah, blah, blah. It's fulfilling that pain point and really telling people immediately what they're going to receive. An executive goal setting video could be anything. It doesn't really tell me what the pain point is that you're really getting over.
All right, so we're gonna hit join now, and it is. There we go. Now we have a thank you for client, and we do have a testimonial on the right. We have the about.
Can you open another tab, the homepage for me, Cliff?
Another tab?
Yeah, John Murphy's homepage.
All right.
Because I believe those testimonials are the same as on the homepage at the bottom left-hand side. Yeah, it's exactly the same one. So that testimonial that first popped up on the thank you page is exactly the same as the testimonial. It's the same rotation. What I would say is have a secondary widget or a secondary set of clients that re-establish that trust. Excellent. Again, about John on the right-hand side, that's absolutely fine. And again, what I would say, John, is gray for a hyperlink for those weekly planning templates, right-click to save, doesn't really say it's a hyperlink. Most people are used to blue, or put something like download now your planning template and daily schedule to become less stressed whilst achieving your goals. Actually tell them what they need to do. The way I'd say is treat your website visitors as dumb on all occasions, because people will quite often skim a thank you page. What is your number one challenge? John's done a great job there. He's really got the information. Now, what I would say is, for John, I understand that he wants to book in 30-minute consultation calls. I think I saw that in his site when I had a quick brief read earlier. You might want to pass, and again, this is technical, the parameters of their name and email address so that those boxes on that form automatically populate. So when someone clicks the submit button, it can pass the details through to this page so they're not having to put their name in again and their email. That to me would be a barrier to completing a secondary form, because they're having to put in their first name, last name, and email again. Right. And again, they're required fields. You already have that information, so just pass it through via a parameter and get it automatically populated.
The other thing I noticed, Daryl, is that there's no thumbnail here, and I'm not sure if that's a temporary issue or not. But I may be tempted to just leave. But if there was some kind of attractive thumbnail that gave me some other indicator that says, "Wow, you really should click this play button," let's click it and play in here and see what we get.
Folks, hi, it's John Murphy here, and you're very welcome to this webinar. So thank you very much indeed for joining. And
so it looks like it's a 40-minute webinar. So, yeah.
Again, they're just simple bits of information to pass through the name and email address. Tell people that those grey links are actually downloads, and then, as Cliff said, pick up the thumbnail. And the thumbnail, I wouldn't say use the front landing page. I'd say press play now immediately with an arrow going down. And again, the size that the thumbnail needs to be, so an arrow showing the play button and actually telling people visually what they need to do.
Excellent. All right, let's look at one more, and then we've got Q&A. So let's go into Danielle, and she's got her website here. Of course, we don't speak Dutch at all, but I think we'll be able to figure it out what's going on here. So I'm
So
looking for her opt-in form. I don't see an opt-in
correct.
form on the front page at all. So let's see if I can translate. Let's see here. Okay, so there's that money, the Dutch training. What I don't see.
As she said in the chat where the opt-in might be, or is this a question around trust indicators and factors?
Yeah, I don't know.
What I would immediately say actually is Facebook is you only have 46 followers, and I don't mean this horribly, but I hate social media when it comes to numbers, because, and it's the same with comments and likes and everything else, is you will actually turn people off by not having enough likes and enough shares and everything else. So my strategy is always remove numbers for social media until you have a following that's naturally occurred on the social media, and then you can actually use it to your advantage to establish the trust.
Yeah. The other thing is I noticed that if I click on here, the training product right here, if I click on it, it's going to take me to another page and then give me the option for the opt-in. I personally would always have the opt-in on the main page, because if I was instantly said, hey, I want to make sure that anything that Danielle does, I want to be notified of. I would want to be able to just find it easily on the home page or somewhere quick. But now I had to click through here, and then I see that there's an email opt-in form right here.
Correct. And again, if the main on the main website, if the main call to action is to like the Facebook page, if that's your main intention and your goal as a business, and again, I said this at the beginning, it's all about understanding your goals as a business, that if you want your Facebook page then put in a really strong call to action about what they're going to gain from their Facebook page, and the like button, removing the number of followers you have, because that is an obstacle to pressing that like button.
Yeah. The other thing that I will say, Danielle, is if I look at your page here, where before I even opt in, you suffer from the same thing that I used to a long time ago, and I need to actually go in and re-upload a new video introducing my thing here. But even this is a horrible screen capture of me. It looks like I've got raccoon eyes and about ready to cry. I don't. This is a horrible thumbnail. But if you look at podcastanswerman.com/4reasons, with YouTube, you should have the ability, as long as you go in and follow whatever they tell you to have to follow, you should have the ability to go in and create your own thumbnails to do that and create a high res.
Actually, YouTube, Cliff, when you first launch, it depends on how established your YouTube channel is. You can't actually choose your thumbnails straight away when you have a new YouTube channel. It'll pick a random point in time, start, middle, or end. And it will limit you to 5 minutes. But after a period of time, I can't remember the number of videos off the top of my head, it'll allow you to increase to 15 minutes or longer. Plus, it'll allow you to pick up your own thumbnail. On a new account, it won't let you do it.
Yeah, they actually just changed a couple things. Let me see if I go to my dashboard and tells if I can find out real quickly where I just saw this. It's under my channel settings right here. So in order to be eligible, you must be in good standing. You can click on your details. Let's see here. Learn more. You can do videos over 15 minutes. It tells you right in here when you can do this. But anyway, how you find this, you go to youtube.com/account_features. And I know that every single person can change it to where they're able to do thumbnails. But what you have to do is you actually have to go and turn monetization on at least one video, and then give it like about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, I knew that they changed things recently around. So,
but this right here is a whole lot different than the video thumbnail that you see here. So obviously I need to go and fix that. And then I say all of that just to bring you back here. I mean, this, you kind of look grainy as far as the video quality there. So just updating your thumbnail. But let's go ahead real quickly and put in Bob Vila. He signs up for everything.
Where did the name come from? I'm sure everyone's curious.
Well, if you're not here in the United States, it makes sense. But Bob Vila used to do This Old House, which was a United States nationally syndicated public television show about house restorations.
Oh, okay.
So there are several people that knew who Bob Vila is.
I bet you're proud to have him working for GSPN.
Yeah, I am. All right, so here we go. This is another one where we are getting the Enor mail. So we're getting a standard thing. So we would want to actually have that, be something that you're doing on your site so that you can give them some other things. And of course, it's telling us, okay, let's go ahead and check our email and agree to that. So we'll do that right now. And for some reason, this is where all my feedback email goes, but for some reason I am not getting.
You've got one in spam.
Yeah, that's not it. All mail. You know what it is? I think that here's all of those. By the way, here's the construction industry. They're all in show prep, but for some reason, I'm just gonna go ahead and click this. Let's see her thank you page. All right, so here's her thank you page, and I should get a translate button. There we go.
What I would say is I don't understand. Again, it might be all the icons. For me, if all of those are different links, that's way too many call to actions. There should be one or maybe two call to actions. One which provides value and one which presents an offer or presents the opportunity to find out more information or do something else. Again, what I would say is when you're looking at this objectively, what is your thank you page delivering? Is it an upsell opportunity for the product at the bottom of the training, or is it to re-establish some trust indicators and grow your Facebook following? This comes back to the first principle, which is what is your goal for your opt-in and your thank you page? And once that's established, you can work out what all of those different links are in images below.
And so in the chat room, she's saying, so basically right now how she has it set up is that the thank you page is actually the full page of the entire training program that she's promised. So I think what Daryl's saying is that instead of having your thank you page take you straight to the product, the thank you page could have a little video of you on the left-hand side. If we remember the template that he gave us, a little video on the left-hand side thanking people, a little message to the right-hand side saying thank you, and here's a link to that free product, which would then link to this page, and then some other calls to action at the bottom that you could take advantage of.
Correct. The other thing I'd say about this training page is I know that people read left to right and up to down for a book, but it should be segmentized to one line per video or one line per module, because 3 across, and then if you click on them, do they bring up a pop-up box or do they go to a different page?
They go to a different page.
Yeah, again, they go to individual pages. So what it might be useful to do is to somehow consolidate that into a single page if you want to, or if you want to engage them on different pages, say, thank you very much for signing up. You now in your email have a list and a link to every single part of my training video. If you want to immediately get started, simply click on the link below for the introduction. And then what you can do is after the introductory part of the training at the bottom, you can say, click here to go to the next one.
Yep.
So you're actually reducing the amount of different clicks and distractions they can have because, okay, there's a logical order for yourself. But if you actually say, here is the click you need to take to the introductory video, and as the bonus, I've sent you via email a PDF version or a list in chronological order of everything that you need to do and roughly how long the process will take, something along those lines.
I found out why my emails weren't showing up. I was looking in the social label instead of my show prep label.
Okay.
Social label is cliff@ravenscraft.org and show prep is feedback@gspn. Awesome. So thank you for the live looks at the different thank you pages we have. I definitely see a list of things that I've written down here. I hope you guys have written down a list of things that you can do. I would like to go ahead and turn to some Q&A, and we're going to first go ahead and see if we can get some people to hit the hand raising icon. So you should have a little thing where you are able to raise your hand, and I will unmute you, or you can actually type in the question box and I will unmute you. So we're going to go to John Murphy first. So John, you are unmuted. Go ahead with your question.
Darryl, thank you very much indeed. That was really, really, really interesting and really valuable. I'm glad I tuned in. I didn't miss you actually giving a critique of my own website, which I hadn't been expecting. So thank you for that. Just one that's not directly related to thank you pages, but overall in terms of the website and being found. How important are keywords in that whole having a keyword strategy in terms of actually getting found?
on your website.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to give you an example here. I strongly, the more and more I do SEO for clients, the more I believe that keywords are slightly pointless. They're a good guide, but there is no. Google have come out and said this as well, that sorry, this is off this subject of thank you pages, but Google basically says descriptions. They said this in 2009. Description and your meta keywords are not used in any form of their Google ranking algorithm. So the description on your page is purely to establish trust and to get people to click on the listing in those 6.8 seconds compared to all your other competitors. The keyword should be in your title and the slug, permalink, whatever you want to call it, that's after the / of your domain. And you should include it at least once in the copy. Now, what you're better off doing is once you've written that content, finding other websites that might be interested in that content and reaching out to them and saying, hey, I've just written this amazing article on XYZ. I believe it's relevant to your audience because you've previously had someone who guest posted, or you've previously touched upon the subject and I've further engaged it, and asking for a Facebook like, a tweet, or for them to even include it in a future upcoming piece. I think that it's very much the Pareto rule. 20% of your time should be on the content creation, 80% on the getting it out there into the public domain. I think that if you purely focus your strategy on having a keyword-rich and dense article, you're just not going to get very far unless there is absolutely zero competition. I think, again, as well, if you can have that piece of content and get the trust indicators from the external sites, you have double benefit. One, that you can use as a featured in for the trust indicators for your opt-in, and secondly, that you'll get the backlinks, which is an indicator to Google and the Google algorithm that is a more trustworthy page than, say, your competitors, because you have these established links, and therefore you will get found in the search. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I'll probably follow up with you offline from this webinar, just have a conversation with you about that separately.
Wonderful. Well, I don't have any other hands raised, and I did ask in the chat room if anybody has any questions. I've got one no response, and I think everybody's kind of digesting everything that you shared. Darry, I would like to take an attempt to just share with folks, some things that I wrote down here for myself, just to see what I've taken away from this. Before we got started, just thinking about my own page, one of the things that I definitely want to do very soon is I want to add my video, like I was showing before, at the top right-hand corner, so it does actually give people a look of who I am, and immediately I'm actually, replacing a static image that promotes A to Z, and I'm actually giving them a video that shows them how competent and confident I am in my message, and I love that. And not to mention the fact that Trust Indicator, the very first thing when I hit that video, I say, my good friend Michael Hyatt wrote this book, New York Times bestseller kind of stuff. So I love that I have that video, and I'm looking forward to putting it there. I am looking forward to adding a list of clients that I have helped, the people who are recognized as being in the top 10 and top 20 of all-time podcasts in iTunes. I've got several of those. I definitely have been featured in Forbes and various ABC News and lots of other media outlets. So I will look to see how I can include some of that in a feature box that maybe rotates, as well as I've been interviewed by these individuals, which again will be very popular podcasts that people will recognize. And one for me in particularly, I have spoken at these conferences, with Michael Hyatt's Platform Conference, Social Media Marketing World, and New Media Expo, along with other different conferences, and potentially have those linked to actually pages that will have videos with excerpts of my talking at those various places. So those are things that I want to do. Also, getting some video tutorials. I know that I've got some great A-list people that would be more than happy to create a video testimonial for me. So I definitely will do that. So basically, that was just at the opening of the webinar. The thank you page, I definitely wrote down some trust indicators that I want to include on a thank you page, such as featured in testimonials, clients in brands. I don't know what that means. I have to go back and listen to my notes why I wrote that down at that time. But anyway, learn how to podcast as an existing tutorial, years established I put down, and also 20 seconds or less as a call to action of why they might want to watch my story video. I am thinking about how I might be able to incorporate a survey potentially. Links to my top content would be a great thing to be listed at the very bottom or right there at the thank you page. Potentially an upsell to something, and then certainly asking for social follows. And then the other thing that I really took away, and I will pull this back up on the screen, I think that if people could just keep in mind this template that you created, the logo at the top, video on the left, a thank you message with a link to the offer that you made. And then I really love this, and I saw you put this on Steve Kloida's, basically listing 1, 2, 3, do this, then this, and share this. And to see that in action, I actually saw a little bit of that in action on Steve's page, and I really like how you have step 1, step 2. He doesn't have a step 3, but that's okay. But I really like how it looks on Steve's reformatted thank you page. So those are the things that I'm taking away from this. And of course, I'm reminded that the fact how you opened the webinar, that no matter what you ask us to do when we started this webinar, whether it's go get a piece of paper or I'll tell you what, before we get started, I want everybody to go get a glass of water. And, we'll wait until you get back. And if we would have given people time, if you would have asked them that, everyone would have gone to get a glass of water. Why is that? Because they're fully engaged. They're ready. They already trust you, and we've given you our time. Now anything you ask us, we're probably going to follow through as long as it's within reason. And that's exactly the same thing that's happened when somebody has, number 1, given us their name and email address, and number 2, have clicked a link to confirm it. They're fully engaged with us, and we're missing this opportunity most of the time.
That is a very good summary. And I'd just like to ask, how many people actually did those first 2 things that I asked them to do, which was write down your school or then the name of your pet?
I wrote them down. So Steve wrote them down. John Murphy did. Jim Queso did. And I think a majority of the people did. Although
I'd say what. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to tell you that I almost refused to go get a piece of paper and a pen. I was like, seriously, who uses that stuff anymore?
I know. I tell you what I do in a live situation, and this is to give you some example. We play a game of Simon Says. So what you find is when you go and do a presentation that everyone's got their barriers up in the room and, they're not really engaged, and you might have put in a funky title to get them in the room. They don't know what it is. So you say, Simon says, stand up. Simon says, put your left hand out. Simon says, put your right hand out. Simon says, give me a big round of applause. So, everyone's up on their feet, giving you a real big cheer. And then you say, sit down. And you'll find that probably 99% of the room will sit down and only one will stay standing up because Simon didn't say it.
Yeah.
And that's that's an exact reflection on being engaged and doing what people says, because they forget the fact you said Simon Says at the beginning. It's a game. So, that's a really great example that unfortunately we couldn't play on this webinar. What I would say, one other couple of things to finish, Cliff, is I mentioned about mapping your customer journey about what you want them to do. As I said, get some post-it notes, write out homepage, and then write out opt-in, and then write out thank you, and get your post-it notes and move them around about your customer journey. What is the ideal transaction you want them to make? And just to finish, I know a good thing that you could do, Cliff, as well as some other people on the webinar, is people like Pat Flynn have a Start Here page or a Start Here opt-in box now. There is no harm in taking what you've already created for a Start Here and putting that as the secondary email, saying, really appreciate your time. I know that my site looks overwhelming because I've been online for 6 years and done 300 episodes. However, I recommend you start with X, Y, Z. And this is the logical format that I would take if I were to start from fresh and start from all new content.
Yeah, I like that.
So again, you have multiple hundreds of episodes, Cliff. You just say to people, this, and this are the steps you should take because this is the most valuable for getting you started podcasting. This is most valuable for helping you find your niche. And this is the most valuable for, promoting your podcast. Step, value the whole time.
Absolutely. Darry, where can we send people to check out you online? Do we have a home brewed website for you yet?
You don't, but if you email me, which is DARRYL.
All right.
at yeah, you can type it in. I will have a website up by middle of next week because that's one of my goals that I set in the podcast mastermind. Is DARRYL at SYRA
.co.uk. So
Yeah,
DARRYL at SYRA.co.uk.
Yeah, I mean, what people will be able to do is I'm taking all the methodologies that I've created whilst working with my clients, and I'm going to be starting a site called People Powered Optimization in the coming weeks, which was one of the goals that I had with Group 3. So soon you'll be able to see regularly a blog and downloads and everything else of everything I talk about on this webinar, and a lot more detail with examples and templates and all sorts of things in a couple of weeks' time. So please feel free to follow me, email me, have any questions before that time. And when it's live, Cliff, if you don't mind, for people who have attended this webinar, I'll send you all an email to say that we are now live and you can get more of my content.
Excellent. Daryl, thank you so much, my friend, and everybody else that was here live. Thank you for participating live. We really enjoy the fact that you were here. And of course, Daryl is a fellow member of the Podcast Mastermind and is often found inside the online discussion forums, and also is a member of group number 3 of the Podcast Mastermind. So thank you so much, Daryl.
No problem. Thanks very much, Cliff. And you've been a great host as always. Really appreciated you taking through and asking all the questions that have been put forward. So, and appreciate everyone for taking their time on a Saturday as well. So thank you very much to everyone on the call and Cliff directly. Thank you very much.
All right.